Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about why to learn, we must suffer.
I'm creating a fantastic training that's digital, has several versions, is highly interactive, and uses micro-learning. A great training that guarantees to make you an expert in a complex topic in less than 2 minutes and with no effort on your part.
Yeah, right. It's best not to discourage learners before they even start a training, of course, but it's also important to be wary of anyone who suggests that you can learn new things without putting in some effort.
They're probably simply trying to hide a truth we sometimes struggle to accept. So, to learn is to suffer. What's the story?
To learn is to suffer, the title alone is enough to make people run for the hills. You could instantly empty training rooms, Zoom meetings, and any other e-learning platform.
That said, when you're about to embark on a training or simply want to progress, it's best to know what to expect so you can prepare.
You're right. So, let's explain why learning necessarily involves a dose of suffering. First, a prerequisite for learning is unlearning. In other words, you have to call into question everything you think you know to make room for new knowledge which challenges your belief system.
And, as you may know, belief systems tend to wall themselves off to ensure their own coherency. Any new information that must be incorporated irritates its balance, leading the subject, you and me, away from the inertia our certainties create.
That's exactly what Plato tells us with the allegory of the cave. Turning away from the back of the cave and standing up to explore the world takes so much effort that it seems easier to embrace the status quo, especially when the new information seems elusive or incomprehensible.
Of course, we might consent to the effort if we can see it as a means to a relatively close end, or if we are counting on a reward that justifies the effort.
But starting up a rough, steep path without even knowing where it leads may seem insurmountable when there's no guarantee of a reward.
And yet, the lack of destination may be our only true certainty. Many thinkers have highlighted the fact that it's impossible to know everything. Einstein's watch will remain closed. Our understanding of its mechanism will never be more than a belief.
So, not only do I have to make an effort to learn, I can also be sure that it won't be enough, that I'll have to start over again and again.
So, to sum things up, learning challenges our belief systems, plunging us into uncertainty. I'm also hearing that I'll never really be able to leave my belief system. I guess that's the first thing to learn. And that, to continue learning, I can never return to the stability I used to know. I have to keep moving forward, no matter what.
Not very enticing when you put it like that. We're more inclined to want to hold on to our certainties, like branches we cling to keep from falling into our flaws.
To learn is to suffer once you realize that constantly fighting against our nature, which prefers stability and certainty, is far from easy.
In other words, learning means accepting that we'll never know everything there is to know, that the answers will always be just out of reach. But it's mostly about accepting to keep going despite all that.
The hardest thing about learning, then, is to make the effort required to seek wisdom. That's how an artisan constantly improves their craft, because that's what matters in the end.
Unless you can reduce a profession to a few basic techniques, learning a job is a long-term or even endless pursuit, which requires a fair dose of humility.
To recap, learning requires effort, and effort can be unpleasant. We can dress it up in artifice to make learning easier, but learners have to make an effort to get anywhere. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short.
Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.